Susanna, can you actually hear me talking? Okay, everyone, we might get started for tonight. I'll do my usual, can you please give me a smiley face if you can hear me? I can see a couple. Brilliant, brilliant, good, good. Just need to make sure the tech's working. Welcome back. We're now in week 10, so we're really on the downhill slope now. I'm sure you're all very pleased about that. And this week we're focusing on the future of information organisation. We have a couple of goals for today. We have a guest speaker, Ruth Baxter from the University of Melbourne, who will share with us shortly. And today we're really looking at how information organisation is changing and reflecting upon the impact of social technologies and how that's impacting on information organisation. So we have the lovely Ruth Baxter joining us this evening. Ruth's worked at the University of Melbourne for more than 20 years. She probably doesn't want me to say that though. And she's had a number of different library roles there. And so really without further ado, I might just hand over to Ruth and and she can introduce herself a little bit more and go into her talk for tonight. So Ruth, feel free to take the microphone.
All right, have I got the microphone? Do I get smiley faces too? If you can hear me. Oh, cool. Thanks, Alex. Oh, my favourite photo. Thanks. There's a lesson to all of you not to put things up on Facebook. How do I move to the next slide? Yes. All right. Future of information organisation, or as I'm imagining will be more relevant to you all, will I have a job when I finish this course? My name is Ruth Baxter. You can contact me after this if you want. I'll put my email at the end of it. I'm currently employed as the Manager Collection Access down at the University of Melbourne Library. I've had a background in loans, collection moves and branch management, library systems before this role, across different branches in the library. And my current role manages the strategic direction and resource allocation for the following group of work units: library systems, mail delivery, off-site storage, just a bit of a poison chalice, borrowing policy, e-reserve and interlibrary loans. So it sounds fun, doesn't it? There you go, I've got enough experience to talk to you about information organisation. I started here as a part-time Q2 shelver while I was studying my course, and I'm now a Q9 senior manager, so you too can move on up the line. Really not sure why I can't move this, so we'll just do this every time. Sorry to annoy you. I was an art student in the 90s, so I'm big on putting my own personal filters up there for you so you all know what you're getting. As Anna says, I've been at the University of Melbourne for 20 years. I've also had some brief time at the City of Melbourne Public Library and the State Library of Victoria. I did a whole range of different jobs while I'm here, not necessarily just sitting in the one branch. I haven't yet put any effort into publishing articles. I'm lazy, but I am pretty vocal at conferences, on Twitter and in library group forums, and I believe that our library's ability to disagree amongst ourselves has been stifled lately and led to a very risk-averse culture. So you can see, I think we're all wearing too much protective gear and worrying a bit too much about things there. When I was a new library graduate, there was a lot of robust discussion. We had the VALA was an early group then that was looking at automated retrievals. They were talking to me about whether catalogues were a good thing or a bad thing, how they worked. There were cantankerous old librarians who took them home and pulled them apart and talked to us about it, and I think that that's not quite as prevalent anymore, and I think it's a pity. Okay, enough about me. One of the most important things that I think needs to be known amongst librarians and information organisation is that change is good. This seems to be self-evident to me, but there's a lot of people that don't believe this. I'm not talking about change for change's sake, although I have been accused of that quite a few times, but accepting that change brings a chance to review and revise processes, check in with your clientele and see if they still want what you're doing for them, and it can be a real positive. More importantly, I would say that change is inevitable, especially in a profession like ours that so works hand in glove with technology and developments in that way. I received my last 3 promotions as a result of internal organisational restructures. Each one was based on me having already been looking ahead at the gaps in our existing services and the needs of our clients and developing skills which were then seen to be positive in a new and emerging role. So that's another reason why I'm a loudly cheerful proponent of change in libraries. So, and you need to take that on board because not everybody has benefited from the changes in library status, and I'm currently on a floor with a lot of cataloguers who find change very, very frightening. I especially am interested in change that is seen as disruptive to traditional work practices and hierarchies, and I'll try and talk about those in the session today. I think that one of the things I've learned as I've moved across roles is that reflective practice as well as evidence-based decision-making are really important, not just for information organisation but for librarianship as a whole. There's a lot of change going on. It's very easy to get caught up in fads. I love new exciting things. But you need to have a look around and make sure that you're doing things that are important. So back when I was a shelver, I took on the role of space audits, and we started to close down branches and bring them into larger libraries, and it's quite unpopular. And another thing that I did as a new supervisor was that I started to implement automated self-service machines, which are now routinely used everywhere, and phasing out check-ins and routine work. I didn't do them at the time for my career development, although they lead to that. And it is important to know that if you stand out from the crowd a bit in librarianship right now, it's a good thing. You will be noticed. It usually means that you're across issues that other people catch up with later and remember. But what I was doing was, it was about removing from my workload repetitive tasks that I didn't want to keep doing on a day-in, day-out basis, but that still benefited library users. I think we tend to get bogged down in process and doing things absolutely right. We're convinced that you have to catalogue and indicate things in a massive level of detail. We don't want to give something out, release the information out to our clients until it's absolutely right. These are all great things, but they're keeping us from moving forward. And what we have to learn to do now is seriously examine some of our standard practices and question if they have clear outputs, and if they're adding any value that no one else is providing. So that's where I think we should go with that. The most obvious one, start to comment in the chat room if I'm telling you stuff you already know, but these are things that we sometimes don't have a lot of conversation on. We have a lot of competition now. And there are still a lot of librarians out there who think that we were the only ones. The only true source of information, that people will value us for that. We used to be the only information providers because we owned the books, the videos, we actually had the scrolls, we managed access to those, we decided who could have them, when, all the traditional stuff of gatekeepers, and we held on to the power. And that's just not true. Information sources proliferate. I said the other day, like bacteria on a carcass, with about as much impact in hastening our own demise. You can see on the slide that I put up here just a couple of ranges of things that people can go to if they want to. If you're interested in having arguments marshalled for what else is out there, Constance Wybrands and Catherine Greenhill spoke about this competition in detail at the last FALA. And they did a really good paper because they wrote about it from the client's point of view and not from the librarian's point of view. So they talked about resources that aren't copyright legal, but guess what? People still use them and don't feel guilty. So that's a great paper. I list all the papers at the end of this that I've drawn on. So these other competitive sources function on adding value. We were already there with the basic service, so they had to find niche areas to change. So they can offer a complete cradle-to-grave service. Some are fast, some are funny. There's a whole range of things, and you can note how most of these descriptions are really not applied to library information services. Thorough, exhaustive searching of all sources or being copyright adherent are still viewed as admirable, but they're viewed as admirable kind of in a quaint way. It's like only admirable when they don't get in your way, like an old gentleman holding a door open for a lady. At first it's lovely, and then after a while it's like, get out of the way, I need to get through. So we kind of need to accept that our role has changed. Now, this slide's taken from David Rothman, and what I like about it is he's pointing out that there always has been change, that our main roles of looking for better ways to do things, better ways to find information organisation have always been there. And I use this slide when I want to talk to people about how the core elements of librarianship have not changed. However, obsession with particular services as representative of us have stifled progress. So we need to get back to where we can add value, and although there might be a lot of services we offer that people like, that doesn't mean that, sorry, I've just seen that Alex is not seeing new exciting slides. What am I doing wrong, Dana? Oh, cool. Oh, so they missed all the others. Do they need to see them now? Oh, good. Sorry. Starting now. This will make way more sense to you. So he will... oh, as long as the world ends, Mark, you got the best ones there. So this one here from David Rossman is just an important way of saying the sort of work that we're caught up in now is not necessarily the work that is the best value for us. There's a nice article, Lyman Ross, called "The Library is Dead, Long Live the Library," and they say a lot of things I agree with. But one of the nice things they do is they examine service desk questions and show you that, and you know, as Lana said, I've been here 20 years in an academic library, and I can tell you how much the service desk questions have changed. When I first sat at a reference desk, we would routinely have people come in and ask us questions about aspects of engineering where I couldn't even understand the words they were saying, but I was expected to find material for them. Now, you very rarely get in-depth reference questions, and the questions that are recorded show that we're actually throwing up obstacles and blocking people. We get questions like, you know, what are your opening hours? What does this call number mean? How do I get printing credits? Where are the lockers to put my stuff because you won't let me carry my bag in? We're really, there's this sense that we've lost something and we have to accept that that's gone. Finding information is no longer considered something only experts can do. Information organisation has to be able to keep up with these expectations and make itself accessible outside of specific search processes that you're trained in or via special search professionals. Otherwise, the information that's locked away in those areas won't be valued. The sense that we used to be able to train people to come to us because we had the good content, now they'll just go for the second best content. A lot of my academics mourn to me that their students cite Wikipedia and they see it as a failure and they talk about it sadly. But students still go there over and over and over again, even when they're told not to. Other academics see this as a possibility. They set assignments to research topics and update Wikipedia, and they manage that over successive years of students. I would hope that librarians would move towards becoming accredited Wikipedia authors and adding content, and there's a whole page in Wikipedia on librarians and what they can contribute, and how their skills can translate across, and very nicely doesn't say they do actually have to translate across, and you have to, you know, be a little bit different. And it's more about adding value to resources that are actually being used out there, rather than sometimes we're spending a lot of effort on closed static collections where the information's not going to be seen by people, even if we have catalogued, you know, the last 300 items in the rare books room. All right, does this work now? Oh, magic. Oh, no, I've gone too far. All right, so all of that was a long rambling way to say that I think the catalogue is dead. I should probably preface that with the library catalogue is dead. Obviously there are still catalogues out there. And if you're interested in this topic, because you know one of the things that we like to endlessly go on about, Helen Livingston spoke about this at the last Dialogue conference with far more research and detail than I will do. But I would just have to say that in every second library meeting I attend, there seems to be a discussion about how, you know, we don't have enough people to do this, this, this and this, and something new. We're slowing down this all under the weight of our own inertia, and we're trying endlessly to do an ongoing list of work and never finishing things on time and getting preoccupied. If we let go of doing the catalogue ourselves, and the web OPAC being the most detailed web OPAC being something that we aim for, then we could actually step up and start to learn other things. Librarians need to know how to navigate the wider world of information more easily. We need to extend our networks for retrieving content, and we need to show clients how to do this also. I'm not saying we're not doing it, I'm just saying that this is one of the things where we have to say, cut back on spending time on these projects and move forward on others. Online information providers who are all fighting for brand dominance will push their energy into more intuitive searching for the basic user and offer customised options for refined filtering only to those minority who want to go further. And this makes sense. If you're searching for general information, why not use a resource that has so much more funding and so much more technology in it, like Google? You can see this practically demonstrated in our library programs right now. General information literacy classes have next to no one attending. How to get more from Google Scholar is full. They already know how to use Google. It sounds familiar. They could use it for other things. And who uses library catalogues after they've finished their degree? Even researchers move from one university to another. Everything looks different. They're being forced to relearn tools. I know there are arguments about general searching, but I think we have to be a little bit more realistic about how much money we can put into a web OPAC as opposed to Google. How much more sensible than using web OPAC alone is to have your preferred subject searches that you search. And each faculty member I speak to has their own preferred cloud-based search tool. Also offering collaborative sharing of research and examples of research data flowing backwards and forwards, so they can stay in their particular physics cloud community wherever they go, and they can imagine when they're searching in there that they're searching peer-related information, so they find that more useful. Okay. What information organisation and librarianship have to focus on now is actual direct access to content. This is the gold for the next 5 years. No one wants to have to go and get something anymore. They want to search and the item's just there. When I went to tender for a new library search tool, probably 18 months ago now, my librarians and my technical support wrote up pages and pages of business specifications based on what we believed we needed for searching. I went through it all with them. They were doing the right things. And then I ran it through focus groups with academics. And I learned, oh, we don't need search tools. No, we've got our own search methods. What we come to the library portal for is access. And they freely admitted that that's how they see us and that's what they think is best, and that's wonderful, that they think something is best. And they were looking for fast downloads. They were looking for minimal clicks to get there. They want easy pathways to the content that they have already found. And libraries do have the upper hand here, I believe. We're used to searching multiple catalogues. We're used to ordering interlibrary loans. We're good at combining them into a clean process. Students at my institution have got access to a retrieval solution we call Bonus. You search for a book on our normal catalogue or in our discovery layer. It's not there. You click this Bonus button. It carries across your search data. You're not re-entering the citation. If you found the item record by serendipity, you don't have to have taken a note, it just carries it across. And it will only display an item record in Bonus if the item is available on that day for loan to you. Then it orders the item for you using your existing stuff. Oh, there you go, I'm talking about something that you already get to use. So behind the scenes, libraries agreed to pull portions of their catalogues into a larger shared catalogue. The software that we all share monitors the requests, create work lists at each participating library, taps into the shared circulation system to lend items under the borrowing institution system. So the outcome for the student then is you get seamless access to about 6 other institutional libraries. And down in Melbourne we have this old paper-based system that we used to have where you came and you got a special card called a file card, and then you looked up the item and then you drove out to the other library and then you went in and you discovered someone else had borrowed it and you swore. But then you had to enroll using your other card and you had to keep an eye on your other card. You had to do all this information that people just aren't interested in being organised for anymore. They expect things to know them. So this system, the item is delivered to wherever you're from. So if you're from TUT, then you could actually go in and pull it off the hold shelf in the same way you pull off books under your normal system. You get the same penalty as you get on the other things you borrowed, except for Alex, who's never borrowed apparently. And you get to use your same ID card. So you've made a seamless transaction, and people aren't worried or don't have to be told extra information about the item. So information organisation in the future will focus on reducing the information the requester needs to know about that item, or even the process to access it. More and more work will be done on seamless delivery, you'll be judged on whether it's there. And so the sort of information organisation data that becomes important is verification data, authentication, automation. So that instead of having to know who you're eligible to borrow from, that information is stored in your system and cross-checked against possibilities for you. We're having a lot of fights about single sign-on at the moment with my ITS system, because we really don't want to, a single sign-on should mean that you log on once. We want it to deliver a whole lot of extra information as part of that, rather than just I'm allowed in or out. Skips that carry across data from citations we've already found are important. No one, believe me, you don't want to be the one that has to tell an academic that they have to remember the title for more than 2 pages of a screen. It's just really not something they're interested in. Widgets that allow you to link back to your source database from any search screen are integral, and there's a couple of systems that are doing that now, so that it's shared citation data and it's just jumping you back into those pathways that you already have information to. So again, this is information that previously would have been stored for an item. We would have known that it's a University of Melbourne Library item. We wouldn't have had the additional information in the catalogue that included who could access it. We wouldn't have had an automated system that allows you to set that up and do it. So information organisation, I believe, in the future will become focused on creating pathways from partial citation data or ideas directly to access of the original content. And I can tell you now through my search screen that people just aren't looking at any of the databases that only offer indexes. They actually just want full text, just get me through to that. The other side of access that libraries have a strength in is that they often hold unique copies of items in the same way as museums did. The future may well be ugly, and that we could recognise the value of this and start charging for stuff. No one's doing it yet. I can't say it won't happen. It's just unlikely to be successful for anything other than a short period, because the more productive value is going to be in opening up storage houses of information that you have to a large range of people and examining new funding options and possibilities that you can do with that. Libraries have vast storehouses of information that seemed obsolete at the time, but fast becoming of social value once they're out of copyright and available for repurposing. Libraries could be mash-up heaven, in other words. Librarians could effectively take on a role like museum curators do now. So adding context to their institutional data, encouraging promotion of certain objects, getting it out there at the right time in the right way, and allowing people to add social information to that, or just it's more about context. People aren't necessarily willing to go looking for that information at the time that they need it. You need to have things flashing past their eyes. You need to compete with Google and Kindle and everything else. The way University Library or archives information is organised now is often lined up with marketing, and that's not necessarily the bad thing that people will say. Records that have been preserved firstly for retention are now brought out at certain times of the year and integrated into university life and activities. If I put something up on Twitter that came from one of our medical students' first groups in about the 1800s complaining about their lecturers and how boring they were, that just makes students feel a part of a longer history. They find it quite amusing, and they find archival information more interesting to engage with. Did everyone get a change of slide then, or have I done something wrong again? All right. Yeah, all good. Sorry. So one of the things as a manager that I focus on is that it's all great to have these ideas, but how are you going to pay for them? And I like looking at alternatives that the university, being a sandstone institution, won't touch just yet, but are definitely the future. So funding models, I mean, if we've just opened up a big storage house of data that's out of copyright and we're encouraging people to use mashups and to play with the data and to reproduce it in different ways, then funding models can just include payment from any profits made on this. So, if someone builds an app based on saying you get 1 cent for every one of theirs. These are commonly used now, but aren't talked about in a library sense yet. And I think it's because I think it's nice because I think we hold on to the idea that information should be free and for everyone. But I run our offsite storage, and I can tell you it costs a fortune to have a couple of warehouses like we do of material that is just not being accessed and holding on to it. So we need to look at these things. The other kind of models we could have is cheap subscriptions. Like you currently have people who pay TV. Oh, sorry, Bronwyn. Can you hear me now? We could have cheap subscriptions, so you pay televisions like Foxtel for a range of different channels. You could pay a library to offer you a range of different information channels. Wouldn't have to be that much. And then the one that I like the most, and the one that I've put up here from Kickstarter, is just crowdfunding by. Thank you, Bronwyn. Yeah, you're right. The crowdfunding, Amanda Palmer's artist I like, a music artist I like to listen to, she just raised $1 million by saying that she wanted to put together an album and she didn't want to go with a company, record company, and she had a range of ways that you could put forward money. I actually think my state library, who have these fanatical followers from genealogists, could do quite the same thing in offering to Catalogue something that was relevant to them and seeing how much money, like if they all put in small amounts of money, it still adds up. And the nice thing about crowdfunding is that it really turns it into a social activity that people have buy-in, gets us back that idea of the social contract that the library tends to rely on. And in fact, the idea of the social good of libraries and free information could be really extended in the future. I mean, if you want to think big, globalization already has people being offered the chance to move, take their personal millions, their business, their skills to different places. Governments could be easily sold a business case that when you got citizenship in one country, then you actually got access to certain information sources as your right. Oh, I want a 3D printer. That's cool. Yes, distracted. And I wanted to talk about, I kind of realised I've been a bit negative, so I want to talk about where some of the positives are going in terms of libraries. And so information organisation is now a social and global interest. Everyone can do it. Some outputs are entertainment, some are educational, some are merely time savers for routine work. To shape the direction of information organisation, therefore, requires a real understanding of how people are using it. I've already mentioned that we did focus groups when we were looking into what discovery layer we were going to buy for our people, and we put quite a lot of our undergraduates through full usability testing with different ones. We took the 3 main products and got people to play with them, and we monitored what they were doing. And it was fantastic. It completely changed what we were going to purchase. And when we implemented the system that we bought, we've had minimal complaints. And most people have sort of flown through with it, so it's been really good. So I'm not talking about how we would like them to use something, which is pretty much how I see information literacy right now. This is what you should do, but how they're actually using it. So, there are companies that do usability all the time. Zano knows more about usability than I do. Companies currently gather data and feedback from use on their own websites. They feed this into targeting their sales at niche groups, and it circles back around. The feedback group moves into interactivity as people promote their preferred resources, and that becomes a piece of data that is measurable and needs to be attached to the information so that you can use that later on. It's as simple as liking a company on Facebook and promoting that out. It's not just marketing, it's about how that information is then organised for other people, how it's promoted and how it flows. My personal reading list comes no longer from RSS feeds or scanning journals. I'm a slacker, but from Twitter, or academia.edu. I follow people I'm interested in and I explore their recommendations and I comment on them, follow their search path a bit further, feed that back, and then we go around the loop again. And it's a fantastic way, once you are following people who are interested in current things. I can keep up with fads from a couple of geeky friends of mine without actually having to do the work myself or the searching. So I was wondering if our future might lie, much as it once was, a social interface between specialists and people seeking to use those specialist tools at points of need. So libraries could function like an Apple store. So you're there partially to sell certain products for your sponsor, and I'm telling you now, universities are there to sell, come enroll with us, and that you need these particular graduate attributes of searching when you leave. So they're there for that purpose, but they're also to gauge public interest in new fads, gather information about the gaps not yet filled in the information market. I mean, they take notes in the Apple stores about all the things that people come and ask them if Apple can do it. They actually record that if they can't do it and send it off somewhere. Just because if enough people come in and say that they want to know why their mouse can't sing, then they would be interested in developing it. And I was thinking that ultimately libraries could morph into giant usability labs. Librarians could spend time physically and virtually monitoring people's interactions with new tools, provide that information back to vendors of those tools and improve service. But to do that, libraries need to open up their view of information organisation. Library spaces are currently still overflowing with visitors, down here at least, really a seat free. Physically, they are really successfully competing with commercial social spheres such as theatres, exhibition spaces, cafes, even creches and internet cafes, because I'm talking about newly developed spaces, I guess. So it's not like they're just, there's often sounds from librarians that we're just turning into another restaurant, we're just turning into this or that. And in actual fact, I don't think that's true. We're opening up a social place which encourages conversations and projects on information organisation and makes them, say, relevant. Information organisation itself has to shake itself up, move away from the old models, especially hierarchies. Clay Shirky does all these great talks on YouTube, and he was talking about how Linux made a deliberate choice to change the management structure of its coding updates in the computer programming to allow for multiple edits and more group participation, because previously one person changed like at a time and then you got a version. Because they felt that if you adopt a tool, you adopt the management ethos that goes with it. And I think libraries have to accept that we might like to be more radical, but unless we do some radical changes, that won't. In the way we monitor things, that won't actually work. And we should be using these new tools to continue to have social interaction, because we need to make sure that we're not just putting in old or new obstacles. And Eli, again, it's probably on TEDx, I'm pretty sure I quoted them all at the end, but he does this great information session about filter bubbles where effectively you get trapped within a limited amount of information and you don't know it's happening. So although customization is the new focus for an internet generation, and I push it and push and push it all the time for our people, an important step in personalising your own information feeds is transparency. And this is something that libraries do now. They tell people what they're searching, what the content is in that search, how they can get more. And Eli talks about the invisible practice of big information providers such as Facebook, Yahoo News, Google News, even newspapers such as the Huffington Post. Removing content choices without your knowledge. They're trying to customize it, they're trying to be the one that thinks for you and only gives you stuff you like, but you don't ever get offered the full information menu in front of you, so you can lose out on trying different information. Your preferences end up being set on every time you come to a page, what's the first thing you choose. And look, if you're as impatient as me, oh, the screen's come up, let's click on that. And I go, look, oh, I'm bored. And I go back and I actually have a little better review of things, and then I have choices that offer me more depth. And that's not the stuff that's being counted at this point in time. It should be. And this is actually the flip side of the bonus system I mentioned earlier. So effectively, you don't search a catalogue and be told, oh, well, there's 4 copies of the book, but 3 copies are being used somewhere else, but you could have them next week. You don't even see that. You only see it if it's available there and now. So librarians already have credibility for offering a range of information sources, of verifying sources, ranking based on factors such as peer-reviewed. It'd be a really strong value-add service for librarians to move into offering a more transparent information retrieval service. You know, we could set something up that you could choose your filters more clearly. You'd have buttons such as expert reviewed, academic level, fun, set up by librarians drawing on a range of sources. Michael, the quote might be familiar. I shamelessly got Zana to send me all the stuff that you've been reading, so it could be one of those. To do this, libraries will need to understand the way information is filtered by automated means. And sadly, the lack of technical understanding of many librarians is really sad, and you should be making sure that you learn as much as you can during your course. We need much better training in computer studies and the way search algorithms work. The generalist librarian needs to disappear. You need to start looking at strengths in marketing, computer science, usability, rather than our older choices of training, archiving, management. Information organisation is going to become about identifying as much that's not being offered as what is. That's where I think it's going. From there, it's a short step to identifying what you didn't know you wanted offered, but would love it if it appeared in front of you. You know, you're in Reddit and things scroll in front of you. Oh, I didn't know I needed to know that, but I want to. Discovery portals are the buzzword at the moment. Now, this does not mean, I cannot repeat often enough, this is not the discovery layers that are being touted by vendors at the moment. I just bought one. I'm not saying you don't need them, but they're just literally what's called a discovery layer by vendors at the moment is simply a search interface placed over the top of a larger pool of content. It scoops out content from a whole range of other databases and pops it in one space. That's what it is. What we need to do is enable people to find information they didn't know how to describe, they didn't know they needed to know, or they want to have that feeling of serendipity. All my academics love talking about, if I just browse the shelves, Rose, if you don't take those things, all those books off campus, I find things I never knew I wanted. There's a computer programming project at the University of Melbourne called iFish that's a good example where they're grouping similar objects together based on people's preferences, and then it will put up results based on your preferences. They've found that the sample pool you have to have of people tagging things with, you know, whether it's fun or cool or warm or hot or whatever, it doesn't have to be really high, and people start to get a shared association. Their first project was based on restaurants, and you could choose things based on whether you wanted salty food or sweet food, or whether you wanted to eat somewhere trendy or not. It was kind of interesting, and they're just playing with it. Future uses could be something like you've got an archives collection and you can allow people to view items that other people have said were funny or were quirky or of historical interest or about, made them feel were about people. You could take this into something where people are actually browsing through in a different way, and that the information they want to know about that is collected and organised in a different way. And this is just relying on data about connections between items that people have tagged on them rather than a physical attribute. And this is really common in people who bought this book also bought, or people who liked this also liked. And research environments do this with the Web of Science citation links to other research. The author of this article also cited these sources. It also leads them on, hopefully in the future. I think they're already doing a little bit of this too. The author of this article searched these additional sources when writing this article. Might not have used them, but that's how they searched, or other readers of this article also read. I think there's examples of that. So true discovery portals would open up realms of knowledge not yet indexed or linked in ways that people currently see as relevant. We'd move away from that physical description of items, and we'd move into the idea of shared preferences, interests and connections. And I really think that that would benefit some of our storehouses of materials that just aren't getting used, and we're holding on to them because we know they're valuable. And I do agree with that, even when I move them off campus and hide them away. But it would actually open that up for people. And I'm getting to the end, so I really am. I think this is my last one. So I'm progressing the way my brain works, hopefully exploring for you guys. If you're going to be doing this, if you're going to be looking for people's preferences and how they view things, then you need them involved. And you need social tagging. It's one of the fun things you can do at any library conference is you can walk around and go, oh, I think the future of the catalogue is like students tagging their own items, and you can start, I say there's not enough disagreements, but you can start a fist fight with that one. Community social tagging is already here, and it's one of those examples where there's no point hiding in the web OPAC and saying it's not there, and we're going to keep ours pristine and only have data that's from controlled vocabularies. You can stop whining about the quality, whether it's right. It's not going to go away. Librarians should accept it and move on. So one of your readings was a really good example. The Danish National Library provided their name authority file through to Wikipedia. And they modified that and developed it so that it was easy for contributors to use, much easier than it is for us to use. And so we have that sense that everyone knows, everyone is attaching information about one person to the right file, but we're not imposing that in the same way. Another really good example is the National Library here in Australia. Found a quote that said over the last 3 years, more than 40,000 online volunteers have improved the accuracy of searching within 150 years of Australian newspapers. So they're talking about digitised older ones. They've done this by correcting over 51 million lines of text. Now, apart from anything else, going back to my funding options, they're doing this for free. But they're also, they're not necessarily doing it in those examples, but they're adding their own terminology. There are examples where they can add their own terminology, where they can add sort of those terms that I was using before, where people can add data to use to organise collections of objects about preferences or about themes that only people see. I haven't done enough work on this, but the semantic web is supposed to be where machines will be able to read web pages the way that humans read them, and they'll be able to put those connections through together themselves and automate it. But in the meantime, people are doing this and they're quite happy to do it. They enjoy it. It talks about the idea of, again, comes back to the idea of libraries being a social space, offering that place where people want to talk about information exchange, but in a fun way. Yeah, building community. But more than building community, I think sometimes the people are worried that we'll just turn into another neighbourhood house. But building community around the topic of information exchange, free information, sharing information, making it accessible to people, all that good stuff that people don't necessarily want to hear is, today we're going to do a project about information organisation. They might want to hear, today we're going to play a game where we take an image and everybody tags it, and you get 15 points if you come up with terms that other people haven't used, but that other people vote on and say are good. Or you get 10 credit points every time more than 500 people use your term in the search database. And these are things that people were doing. Yeah. And I also think that with automated searching, there'll be less of these concerns about crowdsourcing data, because the need for controlled vocabularies goes out the window. Now, I probably stand alone on this, don't say this to a cataloguer, and I'm sure that I'm being too extreme, but if automated searching can search, it doesn't bother me if I type in 15 different terms. And Clay Shirky has this argument that collapsing descriptive terms into master hierarchies really loses you the essence of some of the search terms. And I think that that should be thought about and explored more, because there are cultural ways that you can stifle discussion, but then there are just ways that you can narrow things down without even realising it. And I think that encouraging more of this openness, it might seem like noise at times, but in reality, I don't think it works out that badly. I think people start to use shared stuff. If you're Delicious and you're about to tag something for yourself, they pop up with terms, and it's always easy to go, oh yeah, actually that, oh, and I might use that one. And then you put your own in as well if you need to, but there does become this sort of shared pool, and it's more open. And the other thing I love about crowdsourcing is that creativity and fun become part of information organisation at this point. And as a girl who's done well in the library world but really struggled in cataloguing, I love the idea that this can be something that more people are actually engaged in. So groups can share and exchange, they can discuss or argue, and in the process they identify new uses for information, new viewpoints on what has been identified, what it's useful for, how they viewed it. I need a t-shirt with that, Alex. People who don't want index as an activity in itself will develop apps or tags if it's part of a shared social exchange. It can be a game, but it could also be a project. I am a manager and I've had to go countless management courses, and they all talk about human beings want to do work that they feel is meaningful and that contributes, and they will actually spend large amounts of their leisure time doing that if they think that. And I just think that there are benefits from fun. Clay Shirky gives a great example of someone who wrote a program that identifies naturally occurring haiku in digitised government archived documents. And it's hilarious. And I'm going to read government documents for the fun of it, and I'm going to gain from that, and I would never have looked at them before. And just as a basic example of how this is a win, hang on, where's the next slide? Oh, sorry, that's a bit small, but you can all get it. I crowdsourced my references for this paper. I didn't do any research. I have to thank the UTS reference desk immensely, because I have quite a lot of friends up there who do new and shiny things. And, oh, sorry, Craig, naturally occurring haiku poetry. Oh, good, thanks, son. So I sent out ideas on Twitter about what I wanted to talk about, and I discussed what I thought could be controversial, and they came back to me with different ideas, and then people sent me articles that not only do I not have to do the research, but I don't have to worry about the access because, you know, I get those with it. And I also got layers to the data. I would get an article that said, the reason I like this is because of such and such. Or quite often I'd get from someone who knows my attention span, yes, Ruth, when you read this article, you'll be bored for the first 2 pages, but you need to, because then you get to X or Y. So you're getting extra data that isn't necessarily important for the way you've organised the information in and of itself, but once you get it, adds value to it. Well, that's the kind of thing that I think we can gain for. So sorry, no, I think I don't actually seem to have bothered with a conclusion. That's my future direction. So maybe, do I take questions?
Yeah, take questions, Ruth. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to use your mic or use the chat box to ask.
Oh, Alex, I am. Oh, hang on, what do I do? I have to talk.
I think you just turned yourself off, Ruth. We can't hear you anymore. All right, now can you hear me?
Now can you hear me?
Yeah, better.
So I've got playback. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I just went on to Kickstarter and typed in library. That one's actually an art gallery project that they contributed to, and they were originally the space, and then they'll go in the next one. A while ago, there was a beautiful one where a British public library wanted to have some, oh good, I'm glad someone's telling us I know what to do. There was a little British public library that wanted to fund, bring back someone who used to read stories to disabled people in the library, and they hadn't been able to fund her. And so they did that, and they got all this money from overseas, but it's not there anymore, so I couldn't use it. And there's another couple of programs, Get Up or something else, where people are doing that, and it's fantastic. And I have to say that it's good that Zana got me to write this, because I must go down the road to the State Library and suggest it to people so that they can they can try it, because they're way more likely to do that. State libraries and public libraries are way more likely to put themselves out there than academic libraries that are still reliant on internal funding. Oh, look, I love this one. I guess I actually do believe it will fade away completely. The more medium view is that we will start to subsume individual web OPACs and individual catalogues into giant catalogues. You know, we'll all load it to Google Scholar, but it's still a catalogue. But I actually do think that, I mean, if you have a look at, I mean, my grandmother died last year at 101, and the amazing list of changes that she had been through in her life, from the typewriter to the telephone to the computer, I was so amazed. And then she was pointing out to me the things that I've been through, and I just think that computer development and the reason that we want to do it is going to change hugely. I think you should make sure you keep up with your computer skills if you want to do cataloguing, because I think that where it will go is in cataloguing more interesting information, and the basic level stuff will start to be assigned completely to computers, and we'll be looking at adding value to that, putting context into it, deciding how to promote a lot of that material, like what you see when. There's a lot of work goes into that with buildings, with companies at the moment, of how to get their information in the public eye. Yeah, so I just think when I'm saying the catalogue is dead, the sit down and enter the basic physical details of something, it'll start to be done automatically. Yeah, knowledge management's not a bad area, but even then, if you talk to knowledge managers in the city at the moment, I mean, what they're really interested in is tracking the flow of information, who's using which information. So again, that usability information that comes back to them so that they can deliver the right type of information to the right clientele. I don't think, I would have to say, as someone who's changed jobs a lot, I think I'm now in my 12th position, I don't think you have to choose too much. I think you could quite easily get a knowledge management job with your current skill. You don't have to limit yourself. The nice thing about the fluid work environment at the moment is that you could jump from one thing to another. The less nice thing about it is that you don't have that ability. One of the reasons I talk out so much is because a lot of people have to behave themselves. They're on short-term contracts and they don't necessarily feel free to voice their opposing opinions because of that. But yeah, I think you'll find you'll jump around a lot.
Okay, it looks like there are no more questions. So on that note, if you could please all give Ruth a round of applause or a smiley face, that would be wonderful. Does that mean, oh, you're giving her applause, sorry. I was thinking, do you have questions? But you don't. Thank you so much, Ruth. It's been absolutely wonderful having you, and we really appreciate your time and your efforts in preparing that for us. It was very provocative and thought-provoking, and in fact, I'm probably going to slightly agree and slightly disagree with some of the things that you've said later on. So thank you.
Almost to stay and hear what you're arguing, but I think I'm going to go home.
Not really.
Thanks, everyone.
Of course. Thanks, everyone. And on that note, we will take a quick 5-minute break, and we will come back and I'll start again at 7:04 on the dot and go into the next part of the lecture. So have a quick break and we'll be back soon. Okay, time to get started again. Let's just see how many of us we have. Can you give me a smiley face if you're around and listening? All right, there's at least half a dozen of you, so we'll go with that. So I hope you found Ruth's talk interesting. She does like to be quite provocative in what she says, which I really respect and like about who she is. And I'm going to drill down a little bit more than what Ruth did. So we're going to talk about the social web and information organization. And it's hard to know what terminology to use. By social web, I mean Web 2.0, social media, other social technologies. You know, a lot of people would say it's Web 2.0, but I think we've moved beyond Web 2.0 essentially to many more different ideas as well. So I'm going with social web for tonight. So the whole idea really is that libraries are no longer about books or even necessarily about information. But instead they're about facilitating people to participate, interact and create and to provide the means for that to happen by doing things like, as I put in the chat box earlier about State Library of Queensland wanting to give access to the public to 3D printers. So that's just one example of that. And libraries are starting to do these sorts of things all over the world about providing, you know, CD burning facilities for bands so that they can cut their own CDs. And so really this whole library evolution is about breaking down barriers. Barriers that librarians have often placed on their own services. Barriers of place and time, barriers in just what we do about things. And yeah, it's about staying relevant and in business. And that's a great example, Dave, about, well, I don't know if libraries are the Kodak stores of the future because Kodak's gone bust, but we certainly need to evolve and change to make sure that we don't become like Kodak stores. I did want to show you a quick video. So it should come up now. If for some reason you don't see it, here's the link. All right. Maybe just, that's just bizarre. I don't know why it's not. Okay. Maybe just click on the link and watch it in your own browser, and it goes for 2 minutes. So, yes, so watch it for 2 minutes and then I'll come back. Okay, that's weird and totally obviously didn't work. So I didn't break the internet. That was weird that you all saw an ad for Honda because I didn't see anything. It just came up with an error for me that it couldn't play the YouTube video. So that was really strange. Okay. My apologies. But yeah, it should have been about social media. Anyway, thankfully, wow, at least you all got different ads. That's kind of weird and quirky. Moving on. So anyway, thankfully I have this slide that I prepared earlier about some key points that was in the video. And you can watch it later, Mark. It's really not that necessary to have seen the video, but just these are just the primary points that I wanted to get out of it anyway. So some of the key points to consider is that YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world, which is kind of crazy. That more than 1 billion pieces of information are tagged, posted and shared every day. That there are more than 64 million tweets per day, and that more than 24 hours of video is uploaded every minute. So that's kind of massive in terms of trying to consider how we can organize that information, but also provide access to it as well. So now for you, now for some of your ideas. If the world is going social, what are some of the implications for information organization? And I think some of the things that you might want to consider here is where does our roles start and stop as information professionals? If your organization has a Facebook page, where does our responsibility lie in regard to capturing the posts, tagging them, making them accessible and findable and those sorts of things? What about tweets? What about blog posts? Do you need to start cataloging those, providing access to those in different ways, yes or no? Yes, is it necessary to capture this information? Is it of significant enough importance that it should be in your catalogue? So some of the things that people have put up include tagging subject headings. Yep. I like someone's quote of, if I'm lazy enough, it'll eventually all get organized for me. Yep, deleting and discarding old or useless information. The unwashed masses are going to mess up my careful organization scheme, possibly. Say goodbye to privacy, and I think that's a really key point. And I mean, I know that personally I have compromised on some of my privacy for particular reasons. So as long as you're aware that you're actually compromising your privacy and you've made that decision, I think that's okay in some ways. Quite a few of you have mentioned tagging. And yeah, I think whoever wrote, do we want to catalogue it all, with lots of question marks, that's a really good point. Not even do we want to catalogue it all, do you need to catalogue it all? That's a really interesting point about, do we really want to keep track of terrible memes and photos? Maybe yes, maybe no. Some of those memes are very, I mean, they say a lot about pop culture, things like, you know, Gangnam Style and things. Do we want to remember that that's been a viral fad of late? Is that important to remember in terms of our cultural development or not? And a DVC category for funny cat videos, I think that would be fantastic. Okay, so moving on from this, and thanks for all the comments, that's really great and really helpful. One thing you should consider in particular is about videos and images. The world's becoming more visual with video and audio and images. And you know, it's becoming very easy to share these things, which is great. In terms of cataloguing, and articles and books and the like, it's relatively easy to put in full text for text items, but it's not so easy with video. And so resource description really becomes vital here. And if you think about your experiences with YouTube and Flickr, I'm sure we've all had experiences where you put in words and you don't really get anything useful back. And that's because you're really relying on people putting in titles and descriptive words that are helpful rather than the actual embedded content of what the video or the image is actually about. So if we talk about folksonomies and tagging, and this is what I'm going to talk about a lot tonight, and just to be clear about what folksonomies are for those who mightn't be familiar with the term. So folksonomies comes from the term folks taxonomies, which are taxonomies that are proposed by folks. And folks, to keep going with the analogy, refers to untrained and unskilled organisers of information. So, you know, the everyday public, those who haven't been trained like you guys have. And it's really emerged, obviously, as one of the ways to organise digital information. It's known by a bundle of different terms: collaborative tagging, social classification, social indexing, social tagging, and just tagging as well. So folksonomy is a practice and method of collaboratively creating and managing tags to annotate and categorise content. And the beauty of it is that it is about crowdsourcing, so it's not just the experts who are putting in the tags, but it's also the public and the users who are doing it as well. Just to get the terminology kind of right, we can think of tagging as a process with the focus on the user choosing their own terminology. And folksonomy is the resulting collective vocabulary. So, you know, the folksonomy is the vocabulary and the tagging is the process of actually attaching keywords to the words. So I want you to have a look at this image. Look at it closely. Let's have a look at how this works. Take a long look at the image, because I'm about to change it. Okay, so what I want you to do, I know, stop it, you might have seen it before, but it was a good image, so I stuck with it. What I want you to do is, each of you, to get your little text boxes out, choose 3 words to describe that image. What would you use to describe the image? Nostalgic. Don't be cheeky. For those who aren't following, I did actually use this same very short activity in a class last semester that some people are reminiscing about. And my apologies, I did actually search for another image, but I liked it because it had a lot of things that you could pull out of it. Okay, so I'm just going to read some of them out. Horse, Vista and Ranger. Cowboy, Grand Canyon and Horse. Cowboy, USA. Scenic, Canyon and Donkey. Giddy Up, I like that, well done. Pew pew, I like that, good work. Cloud, Shadow, Blue. Mules not horses. Man, Donkey and Sky. Good. So what you should notice from this is basically that everybody has their own way of viewing things, and that this is both the great thing about tagging and also the not so great thing is that it's harder to come to consensus, and unless your search is able to accommodate all of these things, then that's not necessarily used to the best ability, I guess. So whereas Ruth was saying that she doesn't really see the need for controlled vocabulary, there are definite pros and cons to controlled vocabularies as well as social tagging and the like. And one of the things that you've brought up is that, you know, is it a mule, is it a donkey, is it a horse? And so in some ways you might need to provide for the fact that some people might get things wrong. So, you know, it might be, I'm not sure which way I'm going to go, but I'll say mule because that seems to be what you're saying. But if it's a mule, should you also include in your keywords, in your catalogue, things like donkeys and horses? Will that help people in searching and finding the image, or will it hinder them because actually they just want mules? So these are some things that come into consideration when you're starting to use tagging and the like. So it's a subjective process. One thing about tagging to consider is it collaborative indexing or is it personal information management? So by that I mean, you know, if you are on something like Delicious and you are, well, let's just use the image. If you have this image, are you indexing it so that other people can access it, or are you indexing it for your own personal information management so you can access it? And that brings in a lot of considerations for what tags you might use, and yeah. So things to consider: spelling. Are you going to use British or American spelling? Are you going to use single or plurals? Are you going to use capitalization in different ways, and does that matter or not? Are you going to use synonyms or related terms, like I said, so mules or all the other words that you're using, or horses or donkeys? And, you know, non-subject tags, which are particular things that you probably use more for personal information management rather than collaborative indexing. So things like to read, or it's cool, or it's funny, or something. And are you going to use acronyms in your tagging? So IM for information management, IR for information retrieval. Will you use spaces between your tags, or will you not use spaces? So all of these things have massive impacts in terms of how people can access resources when they're tagged. What's an acronym, Craig? An acronym is when you use the first letter from the words to, I can't even explain it very well. Yes. Oh, acronyms. Oh, you're being cheeky with me. Is that what you're doing? Okay, I've got bad spelling, everyone, and Craig's just pointed that out. Anyway, acronyms is a new word, but it means the same thing as acronyms. I fell for that one. All right, so let's look at a specific example. This is a specific example of vocabulary use for tags used for pocketmod.com. And you'll see down the bottom some of the different tags that have been used. So some are helpful, some are not so helpful. Some like GTD, getting things done, which some people would be familiar with, other people mightn't be familiar with. Things like fun, is that helpful? Is free helpful? Is cool helpful? So you'll see that there's a variety of different tags used there that are examples of some of the things that I just mentioned. Alex, you would need to design the search algorithms to fit the types of tags people are using, but the problem is that if it's so freeform, if people can use any tags, then there are kind of limitless variations to that, and that makes it really difficult to design for, which is why a lot of our systems, which are quite inflexible, revert to controlled vocabularies, because you can design for that. So that's one example of different tagging. So I wanted to show you this example. So if we look at the tags. So this is 1Q84, which is a new Haruki Murakami book for anybody interested. You'll see here, now thankfully you can actually read this, that these are some of the tags that people added to this product. And really, a lot of these are kind of sooky, whiny tags, if I can say that, more than anything else. So things like too expensive for Kindle, outrageous Kindle price, greedy publisher, you know, overpriced Kindle version. These are some of the tags that have been attached to this book, which are obviously not really that helpful in terms of access, even though it might help some people in terms of making a decision. So, yeah, so I think that's a really interesting example of how tagging's gone wrong, and that we don't necessarily want everybody to be going freeform tagging all the time. Alex, in terms of, is that what tag clouds are for? I no longer know what that's referring to. Tag clouds you can use as a way of searching and a way of access, definitely. And if you can see everybody's tags and then pick from them, then that's actually quite helpful in terms of searching and access, and another way around it, definitely. So that's one example of tagging gone wrong that I wanted to share with you. As I was saying, tagging has a lot of pros and cons. So there are great pros. There's freedom, you know, it's unlimited and unrestricted for people. It's low cost because, you know, the masses are doing it. It reflects users' language and how they want to approach subject access and information retrieval. They're also using up-to-date terminology. And it's meeting user needs in some way, and it's empowering and democratic for the user to be able to contribute to these systems. But the cons of that are that there's a lack of vocabulary control. So, you know, it's hard. It can be harder to access if there's only tags to access by. And, you know, if you are trying to search a complex topic, it can be quite difficult to conduct a comprehensive search that gets relevant results for you. And then there's issues around subjectivity and scalability and the retrieval results. In terms of, are tag clouds useful other than that's mildly interesting? It can be useful if you don't necessarily know that two terms are alike, or that you know, you might be searching for a new topic and you don't know the synonyms for that. So the related terms could actually really help you. I know that we've talked in the past about the heart attack one. So, you know, if you were searching heart attacks and there was a tag cloud that said myocardial, whatever it is, that I can't remember anymore, then you'd go, oh, well, that's kind of related, so maybe I'll click on that, and then you'd find out that that meant heart attack. Infarction, thank you, myocardial infarction. Brilliant. So, so in that way, it can be helpful. But I think for the most part, in most of the ways that they're used, it does generally tend to be mildly interesting instead. And Dave, I totally agree that moderation depends on the context, but there are some self-moderating crowdsourcing sites that are incredibly valuable. They're usually quite specialist sites though. So I think there's two scales. There's either the very specialist sites that are very good at it, or there's the very mass large-scale sites, so things like Delicious, where so many people use them that more than likely the tags are going to be more helpful. So just on that, by the way, when I said about catalogues and the like, so this week, well, I'm about to get to social catalogues, so I'll say it in a minute. Did anybody have any questions before I moved on? Or if you are happy for me to move on, please give me the usual smiley face. Cool. All right. So, talking about social catalogues, and I'll just go back to the point I was about to make. that if you've already done this week's activity, you will have looked at a couple of different library catalogues that included some social aspects, taggings and ratings and reviews. And I think one of the interesting things is that so many sites now are incorporating tagging and ratings and reviews that, you know, when you go to a site and there's no ratings or reviews, then it's really frustrating. And in that way, you kind of don't want to make a no man's land where the option's available but no one's making use of it, so then it's not actually useful anyway. And in that way, you kind of need either a very passionate specialist community to be adding this content, or you need to be en masse like Amazon, like Delicious, like Facebook, where so many people are tagging things that it's more likely that things are going to be more accurate and that you're going to have lots of reviews to choose from. So over the past 5 years in particular, I think Amazon has been, you know, the epitomized model, the ideal model that libraries should try and emulate. So I thought it might be interesting to have a look at some of the things that they do and if they would be useful within a catalogue and why, or why not. So I'm hoping that you can see that this is just readable. I did check it to see if it would. And I'll let you know that I did take all of this from the same book, so it's 1Q84, all the one record, and I just chopped up bits and put it in. So you'll see things like customers who bought this item also bought. And the other one on this is customer reviews, so you'll see a rating out of 5, as well as how many people gave it each rating, as well as key, I guess, quotes of people's thoughts on it, and the most helpful customer reviews, which have been ranked and rated by people as well. There are some really helpful things here. Potentially, customers who bought this item also bought, or if you change that to customers who borrowed this item also borrowed, that could be a potentially interesting thing for users. Alex, I would assume that they use some kind of text matching kind of software that, you know, almost like a plagiarism software where they could pick up bits of text and understand that people have said similar things. I think it's really interesting to think about, though, Lisa, commenting on your comment. I wonder if, would this be helpful in a library, or is it only helpful when you're purchasing? I think that's an interesting concept. We look for customer reviews. I look for customer reviews and ratings everywhere I go, but every time I've gone to a library, it's been generally an underutilized function if it's there at all, and so it's actually not helpful and not trustworthy, so I wouldn't necessarily use it. Yeah, I think so, Craig, that sort of social linking may throw up false positives. And you know, how many ratings and reviews does something need before it actually becomes a trusted resource, or you know, it becomes a number that's enough that you would trust it. Interestingly, so that you used Amazon to help inform your borrowing decisions. Oh, Mike, I have no doubt that they would deal, that torrent sites would deal with catalogues and information and tagging really well. But yes, probably not the best example to show the class. That's very true, Alex, that you don't feel so bad because you're not paying money. So there's differences there. Some other things that they have. What other items do customers buy after viewing this item? So they might view the item but then buy something else. So that could be interesting. You know, how many library books get their records looked at but then not borrowed. That could be interesting. Popular highlights. This is really interesting. I think this could be an interesting way forward in that these popular highlights are things that have been highlighted on Kindles within the book. So that, I mean, that only tells you specific, I guess, snippets from the book, but that could be interesting for some people. And then the one at the bottom was customer suggestions. So other customers suggested these items if you like this item, but that's trusting customers again. And while you're talking about book sites, I'm also Book Depository. Big winner. And finally, on this page, they have forums, so where you can ask questions about the book. So you'd like to, and I think these are lists written by people. And finally, look for similar items by category. And in this way, really, this is the one thing that libraries already do. It's like the controlled vocabulary that goes with the item. So there are lots of different options, but how many of them are useful? And you know, how many of these options have you used on Amazon? I've probably, you know, only used 1 or 2 of those, and they have like 10 or 12 different options. That's actually quite amazing. But think of some of the issues with it as well. What makes some of these useful? What makes them not useful? When are they good and when are they bad? And how many of these things are actually practical and valuable to be added to our social catalogues for our users? Alex, I agree that if you're catering to the masses, you have to have lots of different options, but I don't know, is it David Weinberger and his book Everything is Miscellaneous, where he talks about choice? And that in fact, you know, often when we go to the supermarket, we're so overwhelmed with choice that it just becomes overwhelming and then it's difficult to make a decision. So give them, you know, 4 options of tomato sauce only rather than 20, and people actually make better informed decisions in that way. So, so in that way, do you need these 12 different options that Amazon offer you in terms of looking for related things? Or, you know, if only 3 or 4 of them were used by most users, and perhaps get rid of the rest. I think what would be really interesting is if we had access to some data about how many people use these different things, and then we could make a decision on that. So, do you have any opinions about what might be useful for libraries or information management catalogues, and why? What would you find helpful or beneficial for you or your users in terms of some of these social functionalities within catalogues? I find things like choosing tiles really overwhelming as well. In fact, this week I've been looking at blinds because one of our blinds broke, and it's really overwhelming. Just give me one choice and that will make me happy. Interesting, whoever wrote, love to have kids write reviews. I did actually find a paper this week that was specifically about creating library catalogues specifically for children. And it was really interesting in terms of that, you know, while adults create the library catalogue for kids, kids actually search quite differently and don't have, they search much more freely and in a more unstructured way. So the way that the vocabulary kind of panned out was very freeform in some ways and didn't necessarily make a lot of sense, but it made sense to them. No kids at your school use the catalogue, Catherine. That's a bit sad, isn't it? Yep. Is it a difference in catalogues though, Mark? You know, is Is your catalogue better than Bronwyn's? Sorry, I don't mean that in the way that it sounds, but is it more usable in some way, and why might that be? Interesting. Interesting. I think that's a great idea about having users contribute to subject guides. I think that would be wonderful. Great, some really interesting comments there. So reviews by readers, ability to connect with other users. Cool. So some other ideas that I was thinking about in terms of, and found things about. So sharing options, you know, if you were on a library catalogue, do you want to have an option of posting to Twitter or Facebook or other? Is that useful? Would you use that? Tag clouds or subject clouds, and we've got an example there from UTS libraries that use tag clouds, but they're actually subject clouds, so it's helpful. So it's bringing the controlled vocabulary to the user, and so you can just click through the controlled vocabulary. So it's not technically a tag, it's a subject cloud, but it's good. Would you like save options? So not just save the citation to EndNote or somewhere, but would you like to save it to Evernote for later? Things like QR codes, which are in the QUT library catalogue. I have to say that I have used that feature quite a few times, in that I didn't really have any paper or anything around, so I just scanned the QR code in the catalogue, so then I would know what the information was for later. Really helpful. But I have to admit that I never thought I would use that function, but have found it helpful. As I was saying before, a children's catalogue, which some people have specifically developed, which is more, that one in particular, is more like the old school Yahoo style. So it's more about rather than giving them just a search box, about giving them subjects and, you know, and those sorts of things to sort through, and things to click on, topics rather than just a search box. Did you have any other ideas about that? Evernote is one of those tools that is quite powerful and quite amazing and has a lot of potential, but you really have to find your own use for it and how it works into your own personal system, which I've never managed to do really well. So the funny thing is that the solution to information overload is essentially more information, and as long as that information is metadata, so it's used to describe the information that's available. So in the end, this really leads back to the need for cataloguers and the need for great resource descriptions so that we can enhance the recall and precision of items. It's actually called telekinesis. So he's overloaded and throwing stuff around. So another thing that I wanted to talk about, and this is from Harder and Harvey, is that library catalogues are changing from local finding aids into gateways to global information. And I think we need to start considering that. So it's not just about necessarily cataloguing those items that are physically in our library or those journal articles that we have bought access to, but we probably need to start considering things like, you know, there are some well-respected blogs, and do we start to catalogue the blog, or do we catalogue each blog post, and do we want to go down that way, or do we not want to go down that way? Particularly when some blogs are very well respected and authoritative, and and will be really helpful for some students, I'm sure. So really the focus is shifting from keeping an inventory of our physical objects within our libraries to where it should have been all along. And that's really about the intellectual content and substance of the work itself rather than in what format it comes in. And these changes are really putting pressure on what we expect from our library catalogues, which is why we do things like go to Amazon or go to Google and search for stuff and then go to our library catalogue to access it, as Ruth was saying. So it's really interesting because really the future of information organisation is that traditional bibliographic organisation practices are lessening, but the role itself is required just as ever or more than ever as we're trying to describe things and access things in new ways and different ways. I love that you're commenting more on the slides. So any questions about any of those sorts of ideas? I'm seeing a smiley face from Alex. If you're happy for me to move on, just give me a smiley face. It's Sunday morning on a Death Star. So he's put away his lightsaber and he's got hot dogs and stuff for a change. All right then, so moving on, assignment check-in. You all should have received back your proposals by now. So if you haven't, let me know. And I just thought that I would take the opportunity that now it's about 4 weeks until your final database report is due to just quickly go over the meat of what that report should be. So the final report should be it's just the marking grid with the comments. So yeah. So the final report should be 4,000 to 5,000 words, and Dave, I'm not sure what you mean by can you get the report back. There's no what's the word? There's no reviews on your actual report. Still no comments on it. Minus forget the plus 10%. I'm not sure what you mean. As in word count. Oh, 4,000 to 5,000 words. You can, yeah. I mean, that's kind of the rough estimate. You can kind of go slightly over or under, but really it should be around 4,000 to 5,000 words if you cover everything sufficiently. So it should include a description of the database, and this is the section that's really adapted from your proposal. So this description should include the title, the topic, the intended users, the record structure, the rules and standards, the controlled vocabularies that you're using. So pretty much most things that you put in your proposal, so you adapt those, take the feedback on board, adapt them, and pop them into your final report. And that should be around 2,000 words. The next thing you need to include is an explanation of your database searching, so a description of all the different ways the database can be used and illustrations of that, so screenshots, put them in, show me how, well, show Lynn how the database can be searched, all the different ways that it can be searched. And that should be around 1,000 words plus your screenshots. Next, you should talk about your database evaluation. And yes, Jackie, you do right. If you've done your proposal in a group, you should do your report in a group also. but reflections are not individual, Dave. I recognise that I've told a few of you that reflections are individual, but they're not. So it's just one reflection per group. Okay, so then how many words do you need to say it's great? I'm not sure what you mean, Mark. Oh, evaluation. For the evaluation, I didn't mean to skip over that. The evaluation should be around 1,500 words, and that's really around how have you evaluated the database and what further steps could you take to evaluate it. So things like the evaluation criteria and procedures that you've used should be included. And based on that, you should talk about what are the strengths and weaknesses of your database and how might they be overcome and what are your recommendations for future development. So that's what you need to do for evaluation. I'm just going to go back over your questions now. So Heather's question about how close can the final description of the database be to the proposal when you say adapted. I say it should be adapted because not everything that is in your proposal is required for your final report, and you should take any feedback on board and adapt your work accordingly. So most of it you should be able to just adapt slightly and put straight into your final report. And Deb, in terms of being a group of 3, it was the reflection that I said should be done individually, but this has been revised and it's just one reflection per group. How accurate is it? How accurate is what? Okay, I'm not sure what that is, Jackie, so let me know. Okay, I've caught up on that. So yes, and then of course, apart from your reflection, which should be about 500 words plus a self-allocation of grading, which is 1 per group, you of course need to submit a complete database. And Deanna, what Dave said is right. I would use Dropbox. Dropbox is a file sharing cloud storage. So there you go, Dropbox.com, and it's very easy to use, and I highly recommend that. So in terms of actually submitting a report, this is really important. It's really important that you keep your DB TextWorks files and folders together in one place, which is why I do recommend using Dropbox. So DB TextWorks reads all of your file paths and connects directly to those. So if you have things all over your computer and then you kind of bundle it together and want to submit it, then it's more than likely that you might have broken file paths within your database, which means that I won't be able to see everything. So make sure that you have a DB TextWorks folder on Dropbox or on your computer, and you keep all of your files that you use for DB TextWorks in the one place together. Then, when you zip your files to submission, which you will need to do, it should all come together and work. And yes, zip the database and the report together. So if you've got your DB TextWorks folder, then also put your report in there and zip it all up together and then submit it via Blackboard as you have submitted everything else. I just want to make sure that I told you the right stuff about that. I think I have. So yeah, really, really important. Make sure that, because if you're using a lot of images and those sorts of things, if you've got images in your catalogue and the like, then you want to make sure that it's all within one folder. And yes, Dave, other group members, just upload a cover sheet again. That worked really well this time, so thanks everyone. So that's all that I had to say about the report for now, unless anybody had any questions. I'll remind you of this stuff. And if you haven't read any of my announcements this week, then the due date has been extended until the 29th of October. So you've got an extra weekend, essentially, 3 days, to submit it. Group reflection days, because that's how it was done last year, and I was led to believe that it was individual, but it was a group reflection. But it makes sense that you do a group reflection because you've gone through the whole process together. So group reflection and allocation of grade. And yes, there is a Library 2.0 conference on at the moment. That's still going. I think it finishes tonight though, but I'm not sure of the time differences. So, I'm sorry, a couple more things I had to tell you. In terms of extending that date, I can probably extend, I might be able to do it for a couple of days, but Heather, just ask me about that individually in terms of extending the Learning Journal due date. It is a group learning process if you've done it as a group, so it kind of makes sense that you would reflect on it together and honestly reflect on what you've achieved and what you think that your database is worth. So it's Lex time. For those of you who are new, this is our student experience survey, our learning experience survey that we do for each unit at the end of each semester. And this is really an opportunity for you to provide feedback on the unit, on the content, on my teaching and all those sorts of things. So it's really helpful for us if you can fill it out. It's accessible via Blackboard. There you go. Sorry, not Blackboard. It's available via QUT Virtual. It's totally confidential and it's open until 5 o'clock on the 29th of October. It literally takes about 5 minutes to fill out. You just need to choose some scores and that's kind of it. So if you do have, the other option of course is that if you do have any feedback about the unit, then I'm more than happy to receive it via email. But of course if you email me any feedback, it has your name associated with it. So just be aware of that. But Lex is completely confidential if you would like to have your say in a confidential way. So that's it. And next week we have Kat Clancy coming to talk to us about information organisation on the web. And she's an information architect and user interface specialist from the Victorian Department of Justice. And she's pretty great. So she's had quite a diverse background. And so she'll be coming to talk to us about that. Mike, she has worked in the library, but she's not a librarian, so she's quite interesting because she has quite a different perspective on the whole thing. So that's kind of it for this evening. Well, she was never a librarian, she just worked in the library doing usability type things. So yeah. So that's it for this evening. If you do have any questions, I'll hang around for a few minutes and answer anything that you might have. Otherwise, have a wonderful week, and I will chat to you next week. Kat is more from the web sense, and she's very into accessibility as well and how to make websites accessible, so she'll probably talk about that too.